with Mumen, to go heavy with on Mumen. And I'm like, why? And before this, she's asking me more and more about the process, more and more about deliberations, more and more about who picked who so and so have on their bottom, who did so and so pick, who did so and so pick, who was they top, who was they bottom. So I'm like, yeah, why are we talking about? Can we just bowl? Like we bowling. Like can we bowl? Like, let's just enjoy. Like we don't gotta talk about the process. We ain't gotta talk about all that. Let's just enjoy each other. You know what I'm saying? I'm here for you, you here for me.
Come on now.
So that's what it is. So she tells me go, hey, good morning. I'm like, wow, Game of Thrones. So this is a text. I'm like, I put my head down, like, wow, Game of Thrones. So now, at this point, everything that we've built before, or that I thought that we were, because I was interested, I had feelings for Zadia. I was into Zadia. I'm not going to deny that. Beforehand, I look at it as this, it's all obsolete. I wiped it all off the table. Because now you're telling me to go to the end or to go heavy onto the woman for what? And you're my connection. You know what I'm saying? At the point in time, she was my top, she was my number one. At the time, I hadn't spent no time with Aisha. Me and Aisha was only, only phone time. So at the time, Zadia was in the front seat, and Aisha and everybody else was in the back seat. Shiloh included, all of them was in the back seat. So if this is what we're doing, then this is what we're doing. So I'm like, so she tells me go heavy with me. And I'm like, why? And in one conversation, I'll speak to something that she did ask. She did talk about in her interview. Um, we did have a conversation. She asked me, "Who's your top? Who you put in your? Who you vote?" I was like, hey, "Who you vote?" You know what I'm saying, I mean, what? Who you vote? Why? I mean, we don't need to talk about it, but since we talking about it, like, who your top? Who your top? Well, you and I. And I was like, okay, cool, all right. Well, I'm not gonna force you to make a decision because something that me and her always talked about was not tainting the process and respect my process. It was funny. We had interviews one night. We was outside talking, and he was like, "You gotta respect my process." I think she was just kind of doing a temperature check to see how I felt because Nia was her top, and at the time I'm like, "Okay, cool, Nia's your top. I respect that. That's part of the journey. That's part of the process, and it ain't for me and nobody else to try to force you to pick somebody or force you or try to, you know, hold you down to make a decision. No, it's your process, and I will respect your process. Cool, set. So we had that idea. So and then we would joke. I know not your top. That's your boo. We would joke about it. In the way she would say the same thing about me. You and Shiloh, or you better be careful with me on that paddleboard, and they don't have too much fun. Da, da, da. But for me, when she put me in my perspective, she told me to go with Mumin. And I was like, Game of Thrones. She texts back, absolutely. And I'm like, oh, okay. So so this isn't connections for you. This is Game of Thrones. This is a Game of Thrones. This isn't about a connection. Because now I'm like, I'm in my feelings a little bit. I'm in my feelings. I'm like, man, like, so I'm just maybe a pawn piece. I'm a vote, so to speak. And when you look at how the board is being controlled, I'm just a vote for you to get to where you need to get to, or get to the end. So, okay, got it. Got it. All right, cool. Hey, Kojo, I've been down this road before. So cool. Now, mentally, we done. Mentally, we done. So mentally, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to start to remove myself from her. So that was Sunday. Right before the directions, I got that. Monday occurred. Was the day before the retreat. And that's when I think she texted me about something about the mall. She was getting an outfit, something like that. And then Tuesday and Wednesday was the day of the retreat. And she texted me that morning, asking if we good. I said, yeah, we good. But in the back of my head, I'm like I'm separating myself. So going into the retreat, I was ready to go home. So me and Aisha had a connection. So me and her talked about, making sure that we did something. But at the time, I'm like, I'm ready to go home at this point. So I'm looking like, okay, she obviously is using me as a pawn. So I'm like, this is a whole game. Like, what's really going on? Like, I'm good. So I'm gonna go to this retreat. I'm gonna show up for Aisha. We haven't had a date. I had time with Shiloh. I had time with Zadia. I had time with Mumen and everybody else who I had. But me and Aisha didn't have a date. So I made it a point to make sure that I took care of Aisha. And then we had a date. And so we cooked together. I brought my massage table, snuck it in the back of the Jeep, you know what I'm saying? Put it back there. And I made that about her. So Zadia isn't happy. So even at the retreat, I
Mm-hmm.
start to distance myself. I start to see her and Nye and her is like cuddled up. He's got his hand on it. Like I'm like, oh, that cool. Like now I'm really like, okay, that's a top. I'm just a guy that's just being played, so to speak, to for my purpose until my purpose is gone, or if I ride with Mumin, who is her homegirl, to the end, then it's doing good. But that was allegedly the plan that I was supposed to follow. Go to
Oh,
the end with Mumin, and what being so our connection just you just using me as a connection to make your plan work. So all right, okay, cool.
so did Mimi know that you guys that she that thing was organizing this for you
I would assume yes. However, I never had a conversation with Mumin directly about
directly?
that.
Okay.
However, when I talked to Walter about it,
Hey.
Walter told me that Mumin had told him that me and her had an alliance. So I was like, Walter, like she said, what? Like I didn't even have no conversation with her. So I can only assume that came from a conversation she had with Zadia and possibly Camille. So that's what that came out of Walter's mouth, and Walter can attest to it. You can ask him, but that's what was said. So I was like, hold up, I didn't know we had like I did like yeah, Zadia told me to go heavy with me, but at no point in time I was like, yeah, like after that, you look at the text messages, like my whole energy was like shift. Like I'm like, okay, I'm just a pawn. All right, cool, respect. So at that retreat, yeah, I wasn't putting no more effort into that. To what was the role at this point? What's the reason to put more effort in it? So let's talk about the retreat and